for our colleagues from other countries, they can ask in English. In 15 minutes, I have to tell now what we have done and looked at for many months. And we looked at different aspects, and I will try to talk for every aspect. And if you have some questions, you can ask me. So if we speak about the sector, we can see this data that the most important is to look, first of all, how many NGOs we have in Latvia. And in January in 2017, we had a little bit more than 21,000 NGOs in Latvia. And mostly there are questions how many we have the organizations that are working actually in Latvia. And also in other countries, we have this problem that there are some corporations who are not liquid, but they are not working actually. And we have about 16,000 that these organizations are working in Latvia. And it is given from the balance sheet that was given to the government, and we can see that in these 16,000 organizations are some activities, and from these 2.6 are for public benefits. And if we look how the tendencies are, how often, and also how many new organizations are made in every year, there are more than 1,000 about new organizations every year, and 18,000, about a little bit 18,000 employees are in these NGOs. And if we look at the sum that are paid for the employees, we can see that the average salary is about 360.3 euros, and we must look that these people have enough money, and that in this sector enough good people are that can work professionally. And it is not correct to say that we are only taking from them something. We can see that we are also giving something to the state. We can see that 38.7 million are contributed to the state budget, and we are not talking about the money that is from the from buying some products from the tax again. When we look at the big numbers, we can see how many millions were in each sectors. And there's also in percent how much it was. And you can see that from foreign donors are the less from all the parts. Then we can see that there is the member fee, and we can see that for the member fee we have a really small percent in comparison with other countries, and this fee is not really big actually, and it is just a fee to show the others that we are actually in this organization. And when it is for a corporation that's bigger, then these fees are also bigger. And then the project grants is the next biggest, and it is from business and also from the state. And if we look what is here supported, we can see that for the sustainability, the most are not we have NGOs that are supported, but actually the NGOs are more or less the ones who are helping and helping in this situation to give grants. And when we see about the sectors, what we can see about the ministry is not only about the city governments, councils, then can we see that it's religion, leisure, and the third is security. And then we can see that there are places, things that are not so supported. And then we can look about agriculture, and it is also something that is important about.
So, of course, we need some backup financing from the grants, and we have to get millions from foreign countries, because in Latvia we cannot cover all the need for the funding. Of course, it is different in each domain, because there are fields where these economic activities are much more active, like sport and culture, where we have big events with tickets that are sold for money. So this upkeeping is much more expensive than in other domains. So the main source of funding is donation that we are going to talk about today, which is a fourth of the total funding. So any limitation by regulations and laws means that the amount of financing will fall and decrease. If we look at the donations during the last years, since 2012, we have to say that this was a big challenge to make this research, because we discovered that the official statistics is very different from what happens in real life. So,
Correct information.
I want to provide you with good information, because in the State Revenue Service, the separate reports provided different data from those provided by enterprises, because they said that in donations we got 14 million, which means that there's something wrong with the official statistics. But we can make certain assumptions from the analysis of these data. So the total amount of private and legal people were increasing each year, which is, of course, very nice. And if we look more in detail, if this is a targeted donation or a general donation, that it is interesting that both enterprises and private persons, and which are anonymous sometimes, that they usually donate for general purposes. So they think that the organization will know better how to use this money. With the fact that is important today is that we have to talk about tax deductions, because when a private or legal person donates to organizations, they get tax reductions. So we analyze whether this is a motivation to donate. So here you can see that corporate donors donated 96.7 million euros, which was indicated by the enterprises themselves. But in the previous slide, we saw that it was 82 million, which is the number indicated by the NGOs. So you can see there are differences. So what composes these 96.7 million? That 57 million was donated to public benefit organizations. And the tax credits were demanded for 36 million euros, which means that the motivation to donate, the motivation of tax deduction was valid in 63% to donate at all. In case of private donors, the total amount was 9.4 million euros last year, but I have to make it clear that it was directly made by private donors, and anonymous donors were not counted in this group, because we don't really know whether they're enterprises or private donors. So private donors are only the people that we truly know about. And here we can see that the tax deductions were demanded in the case of only 1.6 million, which makes 17%. Then, however, we cannot say that the tax deductions is not a motivation for this group, because in case of corporate donors, this possibility of tax deductions were asked because it is more comfortable for corporate donors to donate, and so the legal procedure is easier for them to get tax deductions. And here we have donations that are counted in the budget. So the enterprise can choose whether to pay the taxes directly to the state budget, and then it can be judged by State Revenue Service or the politicians how it was used. But here, by donating, you know, the enterprises know how these taxes are being used, so and they know what will be done with this money in the NGOs. So one of our conclusions is that we have to think about how to make a new system, how to facilitate the procedure of donating for private donors, and how to incorporate some more funds from the corporate donors. So we think that we should replicate the model of Poland and Lithuania, where private donors can choose they can choose if to donate some of their taxes to NGOs. But if we look deeper into the issue that about tax deductions, the Ministry of Finances, they are responsible for the fact how money is used for NGOs or some other purposes. So our recommendation is that when private donors are making their annual tax reports, that then they could indicate which part of their taxes can be donated to NGOs and indicate that in their electronic system, and that private donors do not have to go to other sites to send their tax money to NGOs. And the general conclusion about the sector is that the domains that are more favorably supported by ministries, that we can say that there are domains that are not so supported by them, and donations that are sent to different domains, then education is not really supported by the government. The amount of donation sent to education, it was number 3 in the list of domains. But in other fields, there is no such statistics, and we don't know about the data. The overall challenges that we can see in this field, we can say that other sources of funding will decrease, including foreign donors. As we know, there is no source fund in Latvia, and European Union structural funds will decrease next year, as well as European Economic Area and the Norwegian finance mechanism will decrease in Latvia, and those will not be 10 million like it was last year, and those will be only 8 million euros. So we will feel the difference of 2 million euros. As I mentioned about the tax deductions, it is a motivation to donate, both to corporate and private donors. And what we can see here is that after the tax policy reforms, the donations will decrease, and we have to think now how to provide and supplement this support for the civil society. Here we are not talking about compensating mechanisms in financial field, but also how to attract attract the donations to NGOs from the society, how we can influence the planning of budget, so that not only the opinion of enterprises but also of the NGOs would be listened to. And we have to define which is the main provider of the support and donations, and to whom we should call if we have problems and if we need funding. And in the context of this conference, we were passed from one institution to another, and nobody could really tell whose responsibility is the development of civil society in Latvia. So this is certainly one of the questions and the problems in Latvia.
If I can take the chance and ask you just one easy question to you, Justin, then I would like to ask about the NGOs. And in internet in the world are many people from NGOs, and just shortly you have been in many researches what we have done, so but because you were involved, if you had to say one idea for the people working in the NGOs, what would you actually say that it is worth to working on? Maybe something is the idea that you would think that we should look at the legislation and think about what should be changed. One thing is the legislation. Maybe for corporations and maybe other things that we should work, maybe for corporations. I would say that if we look at this time, we can see what Estonia did. And Estonia made a model from which we can learn. And we can look and see how it is when there is 0% of the invested profit implanted, and with this new implementation in the law, we can use it, and then it is a way also how we work, and about how we can get more private funding is also important to learn it from Estonia, and also from the people, from the government, that how the people there is helping philanthropy, and this is also important with our main partner to look at it, how people can get back from the taxes also money if they are helping the public benefit organizations. And there are some changes that we can